Teachers of Reddit with former students returning to visit you, what's the most unexpected thing they've told you? Former student, remember me? You always used to scold me by saying, pay attention. Nobody is going to pay you to stare out a window. Teacher, oh, yes. What do you do now? Former student, I'm an airline pilot. This is my first semester as a teacher, so I can't really say just yet. I saw one of my high school teachers recently though. He hated the fact that I used Ctrl-Alt-Delete once because I was supposedly deleting important files from the C drive. I told him that was stupid and he expelled me from his class. I teach computer science at a college now. A former student told me that their college roommate pooped in their microwave. My shyest, quietest student ever, Noixag, came back to me via my TV, as she had become a comedian and is now a household name in Japan. That was a shock. Kinda the opposite, but I ran into a former teacher a few years ago at the supermarket. Now, I was a complete idiot at high school. Class clown who failed pretty much everything, her class especially. Anyway, we talked for a bit and she asked me what I was doing these days, probably expecting me to say unemployment. The look of shock and surprise on her face was priceless when I said that I'd just finished my master's degree and was about to start working for one of the top 4 consulting firms in the world. I am not a teacher, but I am actually the principal of a high school. There was that one annoying kid who would always come into my office to make suggestions on how to make the school a better place. I mean, it is rather admirable, however the ideas were rather unique, you could say. Examples include to allow skateboards in hallways to prevent people from running in hallways or having to extend the lunch break from 15 to 30 minutes. He was always such a nice kid and now my assistant principal. A former student, who was in college at that point, I knew her when she was in high school, contacted me looking for advice about college and finances, because her parents had decided to stop paying for her education midway through. Part of the way through the conversation, she mentioned that she started working as a professional dominatrix to pay the bills. Definitely didn't expect that from the quiet but funny girl that I remembered. When I was a sophomore, I gave my English teacher hell. I'll spare you the details. Fast forward 10 years and I'm a teacher at the same school she teaches at. This was 10 years ago roughly. I go up to her at the teacher workshop before school and say, "Hey Mrs. So-and-so. You used to teach me at XYZ school. I'm really sorry for the way I treated you. I was a stupid kid back then." She says, "No, I couldn't have taught you. I transferred to ABC school in '94 at mid-semester." Me, "Yes, you taught me first semester and you transferred halfway through my year. We had a new teacher after you." Her, "What's your name?" Me, says my name. At this point she makes a face like she has seen the devil and walks off without saying a word. No joke. Part of me felt terrible and the other part of me was pissed. My middle school math teacher loved my group of friends and I who were mathletes, kids who did math competitions. I ran into her last week when she saw me working as a barista at a cafe and I told her I'm working towards a philosophy degree. She looked surprised and slightly confused. I've taught acting classes sporadically in the last 10 years, and I recently had one of my former students come to me and tell me that I was the best teacher she's ever had and that I was the sole reason she had the guts to move to LA and give it a real shot, and she's doing quite well. I nearly cried. Visited my PE teacher. He always assumed I was just a lazy blow-off because I slept through his 7 a.m. class a few times. I was generally pretty respectful, but he was always a huge dick to me and everyone for no reason. First thing he says, "How are you? Where are you at these days, local community college?" In a super condescending voice. Stanford. Felt fucking great. I didn't have a student come to me, but close enough. I was laid off last year. One of my colleges asked if I had heard the news, which I of course didn't. One of my students, a junior when I left that school, had given birth in her home, and dumped the baby in a trash bag in the alley. Terrifying. I wasn't really a teacher, but I was a co-director for an after-school program. I'm white and everybody else was black. This didn't really bother me and I didn't think it was a big deal at all. Well, a couple years later I ran into a student and he told his friends, in front of me, that I was the only white person who ever liked him. This made me sad, and I asked him, what did you mean by that? And he said something like, oh, you're the only white person that thought I could amount to anything. I hope to God he's wrong about that, and I told him something like he doesn't need white people to like him to become successful. This isn't a very happy story and more common than I'd like to hope, which bums me out even more. I used to teach high school in the inner city and taught a class on college readiness. I followed freshmen until their senior year, guiding them to make sure they made the right decisions to get into a competitive four-year college. There was this one girl, C, who came from an abusive family. Seriously, her mom was a nut job, for example physically hit this girl, locked her in the shed as punishment, withheld food and clothes just because, revolving door of boyfriends that mistreated C, etc., and child services had to get involved a lot. C had a lot of shit going against her, no support, illegal status, really meek and downtrodden personality, but she was smart and worked hard. She had a shining quality to her that I can't describe. I felt if any kid was going to make it out of the neighborhood, she would with some guidance. After a lot of intervention, other teachers and I were able to convince her the only way out of her hellish life was college. She had been working at Burger King since she was a freshman and her big dream was to become a manager there and be able to afford her own apartment. No. She was going to go to college and doing something more with her life than managing a Burger King in the ghetto. As teachers, we definitely wanted this for her, but the painful quality about C was that she knew her life was going nowhere and yet she had taught herself that she could be okay with it. She felt that's all she deserved. It took literally years to make her feel that she could be capable of something more, and that she could attain it, and she did. She got into her dream university, a highly ranked state school with a 20% acceptance rate. We were able to work out a good scholarship for her and loan arrangements. She was set. And this was after a lot of work. I literally had to appear with her in family court and the teachers band together to hire immigration lawyers for another issue. Some teachers housed her when her mom would periodically kick her out. We had fundraisers for her college expenses, the whole shebang. We waded through a lot of crap and we tried our best to support her, and I felt in the end we got her to a good place. Then the school went to shit. There were a coup and upper management fired our principal, who with all his flaws cared about his students and had built the program from the ground up. About 3 out of 4 of the staff left or was fired, and the ones who didn't return, myself included, were told not to contact the kids and not to come back to campus. Legal shit and everything. So we didn't, at least not until the student was 18. I lost contract with C, but I felt pretty good about her chances. She was more confident and self-assured as a senior than I had hoped for, and her team had created a solid foundation for her to start college in. I was worried, but had high hopes. Besides, a teacher she was close with was still employed with the school and I didn't feel she would fall off the wagon without support, so to speak. About a year after all this, I ran into C at a grocery store. She was working there now. I took her out to coffee during her break and she told me she never ended up going to the university. She got kicked out of her home, was homeless and couch surfing for a while. She graduated, but never showed up for college orientation. There are a bunch of logistical reasons, like her mom kicking her out and then shredding all the incoming mail from the university, but I think the school collapsing and all the teachers leaving really undid a lot of personal growth for her. She lost her drive and her hunger. She didn't think she could do it anymore. She was back to square one. Anyways, she Facebooked me a couple months ago for an update and told me she was slowly getting her life back in order, going to community college, saving up, etc. I'm not sure what the moral of the story is, but I guess the most unexpected thing I learned from it all was that none of the work we did really mattered at the end, at least in the way we teachers had hoped. She's still in the neighborhood with a high school education doing minimum wage jobs. A couple of us tried to reconnect with her and get her started again, but it's really hard to get kids to listen to you when you're not their teacher anymore. She was definitely appreciative and really grateful for all that we did for her, but at the end of the day she didn't believe in herself enough to take that next life step. And there was nothing more we could have done to change that. Not a teacher, but when I went back the first thing my ex-English teacher asked me was, "Did you nail my kid?" Weird 'cause I did.